Hello everybody. How you doing? Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. And if you aren't, hopefully we can provide some light entertainment for you in the meantime, just to keep your mind occupied with something other than whatever it is that's ailing you at the moment. Right, so here we are. What are we doing? So I've just been eating my lunch, a little late, but hey, that's what happens when you're doing lots of admin tasks and also hosting Zoom meetings and all sorts of things like that. Right, so where did we get up to? I will tell you where we got up to. The last chapter we had was called The Prisoners in the Tower, and we had Edred and Elfrida were being held in separate parts of the Tower of London, and they couldn't get back to their own time because they needed to be together if they were to summon the Mouldiwarp to do some of his magic to get them back to their own time zone. And then Edred actually did some pretty clever thinking, and we're all quite proud of him, really. He's used to his sister being more clever than he is. She's 2 years older. She's 11, I think, and he's 9. And usually he just relies on her being the one to actually figure everything out, and then he just either goes along with it or argues with her, which is a big part of what they're having to learn to not do in this book, is to not argue with one another all the time. Excuse me, burping. So we'll see how they get on in that respect. There's always one of the more powerful effects of them arguing at the moment is that they can't do any time traveling thing to a different time period to look for the lost treasure of the family background, the House of Arden, of which Edred is now the Lord, even though he's only 9 years old, unless they have not fought for 3 days. And it's not from the beginning of the argument, it's from the end of the argument. So they're having to learn how much they have a tendency to do this and to just enjoy getting into a decent argument about something, and that they are responsible for how they behave and what they can do to not take an argument further. That sort of thing. Lots of good, useful, growing up things to learn. So it's just one of those things. Anyway, from time to time you will see me look across to my other screen. I'm just checking to see if there's any work I need to be doing over there specific to me streaming, to making sure that there aren't any issues with anything, such as banning bots, things like that. It's not a bad thing to just keep an eye on what's going on with your streaming community. Keep it safe and healthy for everybody who is a real person who wants to participate in what you're doing. So I've been learning over the last little while about how to keep an eye on who is actually watching and who isn't, making sure that the real people, genuine people who are real people, not just a screen name and it's a little bit of computer programming, are safe and okay to watch, and also to block those that are not real people and are therefore not like to be here just to watch and be part of the community, engaging in whatever it is that the community is that they do. So our community, we listen to old books. So now's probably a good time for me to actually introduce myself to you if you are new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as this one here. I'm just reaching around behind my magical green screen. This book here is 125 years old, and it was given to my grandmother's brother. I can even still feel the dips in the page from where the printing press pressed down into the paper to impact, to push the ink onto the paper. So just little things like that, very old. No, I'm not looking after it with cotton gloves or anything like that. It's just a family book. I grew up with lots of old books in our family, and a lot of the books that I read were either gifts for birthdays and Christmases, or they were ones that were passed on to me from other family members, such as the books that had been my parents' and my grandparents' books, ones that were new for them or even hand-me-downs for them. I grew up reading those books. So this channel sprang out of me enjoying those sort of books and realising that they're not available now for most people. There are some that are available that you can download for free from places like Project Gutenberg, and I'll give you the link for that now. Project Gutenberg is a repository for public domain books, books that are no longer within copyright. The basis of the ruling that they use for it is American copyright law, which is, I think, the life of the author plus 50 years. In other words, if an author died in a particular year, then not 50, 70 years. If an author died in a particular year, then 70 years after that at the end of that year, then that book is no longer held within copyright, and so it can actually be used in public settings without having to pay special fees for it or get permission and things like that. So I believe that people who do a job should be paid for their job. I don't have an income to be able to apply for, get permission and pay the fees to broadcast, to read in a broadcast setting books that are written by authors who are still alive. You can go and buy those books and read them for yourself. You can probably even get them from the library. A lot of old books, though, you can't get from the library anymore because they only have holdings for a certain age. If it's a really popular book, it may still be within the library system, such as Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It's considered a classic, so it's still available in a lot of libraries, even though it is no longer within copyright. But books by other authors from the same time period that are not really well known are no longer held at most people's local libraries. If a book is not a particularly popular book, but is within 3 years of publication, they will hold often, not guaranteed, it's different for different libraries. Most libraries will hold a book for 3 to 5 years, depending on how popular it is after the time that they've bought it, obviously when it was first published, probably. But if it's not popular, gone. Make room on the shelves for newer books, more exciting books, ones that may be more popular, things like that. And the same also goes for digital copies of books. They will last a lot longer within the library system because they don't take up physical space, but it still is digital storage space that they have to pay for to access, to use. And so therefore there are usually limits on that sort of thing, which is, it's a shame. So rather than letting these things get lost, there are a group of us who actually read old public domain books in places where people can access them, such as live on Twitch and as recordings on YouTube. Now, if you arrive on my Twitch channel and I have finished reading for the day, or I'm between reading days or something like that, for 2 weeks after I have read a book, or a section of a book, that video will be available on Twitch. After that 2 weeks, I will put that recording over to YouTube. I will trim it a little bit so it's just down to the video window, and it doesn't have the 10 minutes of starting soon screen at the beginning and that sort of thing. But other than that, they are not edited. So you will get all of me chatting like this. You will feel like I'm just sitting there talking to you from your computer screen or your phone or whatever it is that you're looking with. So you get the opportunity to actually experience these sort of things that otherwise have gone missing for a lot of people. So, sorry, I'm just doing a little bit more computer housekeeping here. Making sure that bots don't take over the world. We don't want that happening, do we? See the Terminator movies. Apart from the fact that the bots in this sort of situation are actually just bits of computer programming. But one of the things that's negative about bots, if you are a streamer and you are thinking that allowing bots to be watching your channel will get you extra viewership because it's an extra number, it's an extra body watching, an extra set of eyes, it's not. Twitch knows that they're bots, they do not count them. On top of that, Some bots are written in such a way where they are actually harvesting people's information. The people who are real people accessing your channel. And on top of that one again, the third aspect of that is that, yes, there's my special numbers. Not that I really have special numbers, but I often do things by threes. The third aspect of that is if you have people who really love what you do and want to share that with others, sometimes they will share by providing a subscription to your channel to other people who are watching. Now, they have worked for that money, they've saved that money up, whatever, they have that money available, they have put the money into sharing who you are with somebody else who hasn't actually got a subscription. But bots also qualify to receive those subscriptions. So real people who could be watching your channel and becoming part of your community miss out on this wonderful gift that somebody else has put their time and money into providing for you. And that's not really fair. I don't think it is anyway. So ban the bots. Yeah, let's ban the bots. The bad ones. There are a few bots that are available that are not dodgy. They're actually quite safe. They're okay to have in your chat. They have been authorized by Twitch to be there. There's not a problem with that. You don't have to ban those ones. But other than that, get rid of them. Ban them. They're not helping in any way. Not providing anything useful. They're not contributing. There you go. That's the phrase that I should have been using. Not contributing. Right, so I'm Jev. I've told you about my book background. I've been reading for a long time. I don't think I started reading particularly early, but I did love reading once I got the hang of it. I'm pretty sure that my mum used to read books to me, and then I loved story time when we were at school. I remember having Charlotte's Web read to us at school. It was one of those things where it was a very strong memory for all of the kids in our particular class. We would come back from lunch break, everybody would be hot from running around in the playground and chasing each other, and then the teacher has the job of trying to calm everyone down and get them to focus. This is at primary school, also known as junior school maybe, or middle school, or any of those other things. I can't remember what the school levels are in different places. Not high school, not college. In New Zealand, some high schools are called college, also known as secondary schools. We don't call them high schools here. Anyway, so we would come back from lunchtime all wound up from having been running around outside, especially if the weather was bad. You know, wind does that to kids. They get more on edge. And instead of the teacher getting frustrated with trying to get us to focus and settle down and be quiet, what she did was she would have rest time, and we had, I think it was 10 minutes, but it may have been more than that. We had to sit at our desks with our arms folded and our heads down on our arms, so our forehead was resting on our arms, and just shut our eyes or leave them open, it doesn't matter, but just still our bodies and listen, and the teacher would read us a story during that time. There were quite a few of our teachers would do that, but this one particular one read Charlotte's Web. And I don't know if you remember it, spoiler alert, it's a bit of a sad ending. But it's got a little bit of hope as well. Anyway, so I remember getting to the ending of this book, and it wasn't just the girls who cried. Seriously, we all felt a little bit teary-eyed at the end of that book. But it was interesting because most of the other kids were not really big on reading, but by getting us to focus on the words, by putting our heads down, shutting our eyes or looking away, down onto our desks or something like that, where we're not engaged with anything else physically going on, it meant that we were taking in the words were drawing pictures in our heads, and all of us were hooked on that story. Very smart teacher. Yeah, so that's part of reading. I've got 3 tips for those of you who are new here. First tip, drinks. Second tip, snacks. Third tip, comfortable. So the first tip, examples of that for me are I always have water handy, because water keeps your brain, your throat if you're reading, and also your body functioning well. And most people have safe, decent water where they live to be able to drink. I will actually usually sip on this during reading sessions, not use the easy to fall over bottle, because I make a mess otherwise. Sorry, my voice is needing it. Snacks. What have I got? I've got plastic cheese again. it's just handy. It works well. Let's have a look in the snack box, in the treat time pot. There you go. There's my coffee tip jar. And if you scan that, I'll hold it up again for you. You can actually send me a coffee tip. You don't need to, but if you would like to, you can. Guess what we have in the tip jar today? We have ginger nuts again. They're cool. They're also, I haven't got a cup of coffee. I already had one earlier on, and they're a little bit hard and noisy to eat, so I may not eat them today. But snacks mean that you can keep reading for a lot longer. What else? Comfortable. You can enjoy a book for a lot longer. You can enjoy listening and to someone reading a story for a lot longer if you're sitting somewhere comfortable, or lying somewhere comfortable, or even standing comfortably somewhere. Some of you may be actually working, studying, at work type working, or working at home, such as housework or at home office or something like that, and just have me nattering away in the background, just keeping you company. That's fine. I don't mind if you need to do that, and if you want to let me know that you are there but you are otherwise occupied, then just use the lurk command, which is !lurk, L-U-R-K, no spaces, no capitals, and it will just acknowledge that you're there. And if you do that, then I will actually be able to know that you're there and that you're happy for me to say hi to you. If you don't want me to say hi to you, there's no guarantee that I will, but if you don't want me to say hi to you, don't say lurk, because otherwise I will probably say that you're lurking. Anyway, comfortable. The reminder for me is this nice noisy cushion, which has a cute pattern on it. And also, if you can, get yourself a stream buddy, someone to keep you company, someone who's cute and squishy and friendly and just helps you to relax, stay in a good space in your head for what we're going to read in the story. Sometimes when I remember, we will have a jigsaw puzzle running over here, and I will get that going just as we're about to start reading. If I remember, you may need to remind me. I haven't had anyone messaging me that I've got anything I've forgotten. I do need to turn on chat. Sorry about that. I've only just realised. There you go. Chat is turned on. You can now chat to me if you want to. It'll save you having to message me in Discord and tell me that I forgot to turn chat on. That's happened before. I don't always have people having to message me, but sometimes I do forget to turn on the chat. Anyway, so cool. I'm glad you're here, Q. Lurk away. Enjoy yourself. I hope you're starting to feel a bit better. Q has not been too well, and this has been one of their entertainments, ways of keeping the brain busy even if the body can't cope, and also not having to concentrate too much, just letting the story drift past. Anyway, so the background behind me is there's a house there, and this is the ruins of a manor house or a castle or something, which have been turned into, over here, a garden. See, there's mown lawn here, and there's trees and ornamental bits and all that sort of stuff. Particularly chosen just because it reminds me of the setting for this particular book that we're reading. These two children, Edred and Elfrida, they have... Edred has inherited the title, the Lord of Arden, and also inherited this small piece of land which has Arden Castle and this ruined house, well, something similar to that, a house in the ruins. So the castle is ruins like this around a courtyard. Probably it's the courtyard is now basically gardens, and then at the other end away from the main old tower, where probably part of the castle walls had completely fallen down at some stage, someone has actually built a house of the stone that was available, and part of the house has been in use and part of the house has been left empty, and the children have been exploring and found all sorts of things, especially a series of chests which have old clothing in from different eras, and every time that they put some clothing on from a particular era, from an era that's in the boxes, in the chests, the trunks, pirate movies, the wooden box with the curved lid that you lift up. That's a chest or a trunk. Anyway, so every time the children put on some clothing from a chest, they get transported back to the time period that clothing was from. And they have this challenge. They're trying to find the lost treasure from this family because they hope, if they can find it, to be able to use the money from it to be able to restore the house and possibly the castle. That's their motivation behind all this exploration. So we've just got back from them having been in the time of the Gunpowder Plot. The English Civil War, I think, just after that. There was a time period where they had Parliament and they had a king. This is after the English Civil War, where there was kind of an uneasy balance between the two. And the king was going along with some things which the nobility and other people who were supportive of royalists otherwise weren't really happy with it, because the king at the time apparently was using Parliament to get some things done the way he wanted, which wasn't considerate of others. And so the Gunpowder Plot was a plan to, before the English Civil War, sorry about that, I forgot. I can't remember the actual time periods. The Gunpowder Plot, the idea was to blow up the Houses of Parliament. And in this book, they've referenced the king being at the Houses of Parliament. So I think the idea was that they were going to get rid of him at the time, as well as the Houses of Parliament, because whoever it was who was behind the plot really didn't want things carrying on the way they were. And I think it was also to do with Catholics and Protestants and that sort of stuff. The typical sort of thing that happens when people have wars within their own country between different parties, effectively. Anyway, hi Jonathan, great to have you here. Yes, Jonathan knows all about it. Different king. It's all good, yeah. It's very convoluted. So Jonathan knows all about it because Jonathan reads Old English historic documents. Yes, digital copies. I'm sure if he was able to get his hands on real physical copy of physical actual documents, he would be thrilled to bits to do it. But it's a little bit hard to do here in New Zealand because we don't have anything from that era basically in New Zealand for most of the time. Although the core of the Auckland Library, which is the library system which I am part of, the core of it started because a chap who had been the governor of New Zealand for a time, when he retired and was just winding things up, he donated his collection of books. There were books he had written, such as Maori myths and legends. He had actually written them down. He had spent time talking with Maori people and also translating some of the things that they were telling him and writing them down so that they had a written record of their myths and legends. But also he had medieval manuscripts, and they were some of the books that he donated that formed the core of what became Auckland Public Libraries. There you go, exciting. And apparently, as a resident of the region, I can go down to Central Auckland Library and make a request to see some of these documents. Now, some of them I guess I probably wouldn't be allowed to, but there are other books that I do want to see if I can read, because there are some children's books written by a New Zealand author written around and published around the 1920s that are very, very hard to get hold of digital copies, because we don't have the funding, because we don't have the population numbers in New Zealand for a lot of our historic background to be digitised and kept, unless it's considered to be very important information. So children's books aren't considered to be very important information. Who knew? Anyway, I could go down to Auckland Central Library, and request to see some of these children's books and read them for myself. The medieval manuscripts, probably not. They will be very, very careful with those, because you're not going to be able to replace them very easily. But yes, they are still around. Yes, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, to be able to go and see some of these old documents, to actually read them, even if you have to have somebody else turning the pages for you because you're not allowed too close to them or to touch them or something like that, because historic documents you have to actually be very careful with. They also are not supposed to be exposed to too much light. The light helps to break down the materials that they're made out of, the paper and the inks and all that sort of stuff. You've seen old pages where the page has changed colour a bit, and the handwriting especially with old inks, the writing starts to fade. That's because of the light. And also the chemical makeup of the paper and the ink, but especially the light. And so they are very, very careful with all that sort of thing. So Jonathan's lurking too. That's wonderful. Go for it, Jonathan. I will actually give Jonathan a shout out, just because you might want to follow him. He does read his old documents online sometimes, and sometimes he also plays games. So, and I think I got the link right. It gave me a thing. Hopefully I wrote it correctly. Just take my cardigan off because I'm starting to get a bit warm. Right, the other thing that I'm part of is, old book readers. Yeah, I'm part of a group of old book readers, and we are called Codex, the particular group that I'm part of. Sorry, cushion. No, chair. Yes, cardigan. There, that's a bit better. Right. So Codex is a group of people who read public domain books. Most of them are North American, I suppose you'd say, but there's a bunch of us, and we're all around the world. One of them's in the UK, heading back to Canada, I think, at the moment, or about to. Another one is in Japan. We have readers from all around the world, basically, and we all read public domain books, and we are part of this group called Codex. I will give you the Discord server for Codex. So if you join the Discord server, you can get into conversation with these other readers and find out more about who they are, what sort of books they read, and also what sort of things that they think are funny, and joke with them, and just get to know us. We're all real people. We have people who are librarians, school teachers, voice actors, book narrators, professional book narrators. That's somebody who reads books for people like Amazon with their Audible books. I know people who read those books in real life. That's their job. I don't do that sort of thing as a job because I don't like rereading something over and over again to get it accurate enough for what they want, but that's okay. But in their spare time, they read books online for us, where I think they probably quite enjoy being able to just read casually and do voices the way they want and clear their throat whenever they want and not have to go back over it again and again and again. All that sort of stuff, a little bit more fun, but also get into conversation with people instead of being stuck in a recording booth. Yeah, that sort of stuff. I don't know if you realise it, but a lot of people actually who spend time online doing things like this actually quite enjoy interacting with other people, even if it's through our computer screens. So that's just part of life. So Codex, if you're wanting to actually visit them, the different readers on Twitch, if you look on my About page below where my video window is, there's a section there which has a Codex header on it, and there are links to all the different Codex readers there on Twitch, and you can click on all of those, go through to their channels, the same as going through to Jonathan's channel, Jonathan's Gamecast, and follow them. Even better, subscribe to them. Share what they do with other people who you think will also enjoy books being read and games being played, because people don't just read. Well, most of them don't just read. I just read and chat. But other than that, everybody else does other things as well. So there's various games that get played and all sorts of things like that. Now, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I have a tendency to only read children's books. It's partly because of, as I said, I grew up reading a whole lot of children's books and thoroughly enjoyed it. But it's also because I've realised there are a whole bunch of older people, let's call them grannies, who are scared of the internet, especially things like Twitch, where it's these mad, keen gamers who are nasty people, and they're scary looking, and they use bad words and all this sort of stuff. And I want them to realise that there are actually other people as well. I have no problem with people who game like that, and that's the sort of thing that they do, but I would like the grannies with their grandkids or granddads and their grandkids to actually realise that you can explore a little bit further on the internet and enjoy it and still have a safe wholesome atmosphere that you can share with your grandkids, and you're not worrying about their parents telling you off and saying you can't see your grandkids because you let them go on the internet. Well, if the grannies can come onto the internet and listen to the stories that they enjoyed when they were kids and share them with their grandchildren, then it gives them something that they can do together. And because of that, I have some pretty tight anti-spam type rules, language rules on my channel. But that also means that every now and then you'll actually get something that you might say won't come through. Often it's because someone has either used too many capital letters, too many emotes, or the sentence is too long, the paragraph they've written is too long. Just because there are a lot of spam things that come through on Twitch accounts where people are saying buy follows and all this sort of stuff, where generally the text of those is longer, and so therefore it's an easy way to filter them out so we don't have that sort of junk coming through in the chat. So if you find that what you have said in chat doesn't get through, first of all, have a look and see if there are some words that you've used that may not be appropriate for small children. Not your small children, but other people's small children. It's not a comment on the way you live your life. It's a request that you are considerate of others. Secondly, check to see how long the comment that you made was. And if you think it might have been a bit too long, then make the comment again, but do it in a couple of sections. And often people will get more into conversation with you if you break it down into smaller sections anyway, rather than a great big wall of text in your chat box, which others are sort of like, oh, I kind of saw the beginning of that, and then after that my brain just went sideways. So that's a way that you can still say something without actually having to worry about whether you get a timeout or a chat ban or something like this. So there you go. I'll just give you my hi statement. That's just there for those who need it. I shall get the jigsaw puzzle going in case anybody wishes to actually play the jigsaw. Jigsaw, turn it on. There it is. There's the jigsaw puzzle. Or getting ready to go, and you can go now. And if you type, I shall demonstrate it for you. Type exclamation mark jigsaw, or exclamation mark puzzle, or PZ, or even PUZ, I think. All of those will bring up that link, which will now enable you to be able to, that side, play that jigsaw puzzle, and we will see what's going on with it. And we all have a bit of a cheer when we get to the puzzle solved. I'll carry on with reading though, okay? So I hope you've got your drinks ready, your snacks, and your comfy seat. Let's get on with reading. We are reading The House of Arden by Edith Nesbit, and this is Chapter 10, White Wings and a Brownie. I don't think this is one of those edible brownies. I think this is a fairy creature of some sort. We'll find out by reading it. Right, here we go. Chapter 10, White Wings and a Brownie. Perhaps I had better begin this chapter by telling you exactly how Edred got even with old Parrot Nose, as he put it. This is probably the easiest start to a chapter we've had in this book. Every other chapter I've had to go back to the end of the previous one to give you the last sentence or two so we know where we're going with the start of this. Anyway, we'll carry on. You will remember that Master Parados was the Arden's tutor at the time of King James I, and that it was through his eavesdropping and tale-bearing that Edred and Elfrida were imprisoned in the Tower of London. There was very little time in which to get even with anyone, and of course getting even with people is not really at all a proper thing to do, yet Edred did it. Edred had got Elfrida out of the tower just as Lady Nithsdale got her lord out. Now, what's funny about that is in the setting of the story, they do it before Lady Nithsdale does it. I think like 20 years before she does it. So Edred knows the idea from doing history at school. Even though he's only 9, the school system at the time, you still did a bit of English history. Anyway, so Edred had got Elfrida out of the tower just as Lady Nithsdale got her lord out, and now he and she and cousin Richard were at Arden House. Now, not Lady Nithsdale. Nothing to do with them. That was just the history bit. He and she, Edred and Elfrida, his sister, and cousin Richard were at Arden House in Soho, and the old nurse, who was also astonishingly the old witch, had said that there was no time to be lost. But I must be even with old Parrot Nose, said Edred. He was feeling awfully brave and splendid inside because of the way he had planned and carried out the Nithsdale rescue of Elfrida, and also he felt that he could not bear to go back to his own times without somehow marking his feelings about Mr. Parados. That's old Parrot Nose. As to how it was to be done, Cousin Richard was not to have anything to do with it, because while they would be whisked away by some white road that the Mouldiwarp would find for them, the Mouldiwarp is one of the names used sometimes for moles in older England, and the Mouldiwarp in this one is a symbol for the House of Arden. It's on their coat of arms, and also this particular Mouldiwarp is white, probably an albino, but it's magical. So, and he uses white as one of the features of everything that the Mouldiwarp does magically. White is part of that. So that's why they would be whisked away by some white road that the Mouldiwarp would find for them when they called it to their help by spoken poetry. And he would be left behind, Cousin Richard would be left behind to bear the blame of everything. So Edred didn't want him to get the blame. This Edred and Elfrida decided in a quick whispered conference, but Cousin Dick wanted to know what they were talking about and why he wasn't to help and what he had wanted to do these 4 years, because he really hasn't enjoyed his tutor. If we tell you, said Elfrida, you won't believe us. You might at least make the trial, said Cousin Richard. Try it. See if I do believe you. So they told him, and though they were as quick as possible, the story took some time to tell. Richard Arden listened intently. When the tale was told, he said nothing. You don't believe it, said Edred. I knew you wouldn't. Well, it doesn't matter. What can we do to pay out old Parrot Nose? I don't like it, said Richard suddenly. It's never been like this before. It makes it seem not real. It's only a dream, really, I suppose. And I always believed so that it wasn't. I don't understand a word you're saying, said Edred, but what we've been saying's true anyhow. Look here. He darted to the dark corner of the parlour where he had hidden the camera behind a curtain. Excuse me. Because they'd taken a camera back with them, an old box Brownie, a particular style of camera, fairly early one that ordinary people could use. He darted to the dark corner of the parlour where he had hidden the camera behind a curtain. Look here, I bet you haven't got anything like this. It comes from our times, even so far on in history, out of the times where we come from, the times that haven't happened yet. At least now we're here, they haven't happened yet. You don't know what it is. It's a machine for the sun to make pictures with. Oh, stow that, said Richard wearily. I know that it's all a silly dream, but it's not worth trying to dream that I don't know a Kodak when I see it. That's a Brownie. There was a pause, full of speechless amazement. Then, if you've dreamed about our times, said Elfrida, you might believe in us dreaming about yours. Did you dream of anything except brownies? Did you ever dream of fine carriages, fine boats, and— Don't talk as if I were a baby, Richard interrupted. I know all about railways and steamboats and the Hippodrome and the Crystal Palace. I know Kent made 615 against Derbyshire last Thursday. Now then. But I say, do tell us. I shan't tell you anything more, but I'll help you to get even with Parrot Nose. I don't care if I am left here after you go, said Richard. Let's shovel all the snow off the roof into his room and take our chance. Edred and Elfrida would have liked something more subtle, but there was no time to think of anything. I know where there are shovels, said Richard, if they've not got mixed up in the dream. I say, said Edred slowly, I'd like to write that down about Kent and see if it's right afterwards. There was a quill sticking out of the pewter inkstand on the table where they were used to do their lessons, but no paper. Here, hurry up, said Cousin Richard, and pulled a paper out of the front of his doublet. I'll write it, shall I? He wrote and gave the thing screwed up to Edred, who put it in the front of his doublet. Then the three went up to the roof, groped among the snow till they found the edge of the skylight that was the tutor's window, for learning was lodged in the attic at Arden House. They broke the thick glass with the edges of their spades and shovelled the thick white snow, shovelled all the harder for the shouts and angry words that were presently sounded below them. Then, when Mr. Parados came angrily up onto the roof, shivering and stumbling about among the snow, they slipped behind the chimney stack and so got back to the trapdoor before he did, and shut it and bolted it, and said, "Aha!" underneath it, and went away, locking his room door as they passed, and leaving him to stand there on the roof and shout for help from the street below, or else to drop through his broken skylight into the heaped snow in his room. He was quite free and could do whichever he chose. They never knew which he did choose, and you will never know either. And then Richard was sent to bed by the old witch nurse and went. And then the Mouldiwarp was summoned and insisted that the only way back to their own times was by jumping off the roof. And of course Mr. Parados was on the roof, which made all the difference, and the soldiers of the guard were knocking at the front door with the butts of their pistols. But we can't go on to the roof, said Edred, and explained about Mr. Parados. Huh, said the Mouldiwarp, that's terrible unfortunate, that is. Well, the top landing window will have to do, that's all. Where's the other child? Gone to bed, said the witch nurse shortly. Tee, said the Mouldiwarp, some people's too clever by half. Think of you not having found that out, and you a witch too. Ha ha! And all the time the soldiers were hammering away like mad at the front door. Elfrida caught the Mouldiwarp, and the nurse caught Edred's hand, and the four raced up the stairs to the very top landing, where there was a little window at the very end. The air was keen and cold. The window opened difficultly, and when it was open the air was much colder than before. Now then, out with you, ladies first, cried the Mouldiwarp. You don't really mean, said Elfrida, you can't mean that we're to jump out into nothing. I mean you're to jump out right enough, said the Mouldiwarp. What you're to jump into is any pair of shoes, and it's my lookout anyway, because it's the one doing the magic. It's ours a little too, isn't it, said Elfrida timidly, and her teeth were chattering. She always said afterwards that it was with cold. Then get along home your way, said the Mouldiwarp, beginning to vanish. Oh, don't go, said Elfrida, and the pounding on the door downstairs got louder and louder. If I don't, then you must, said the Mouldiwarp testily, but it stopped vanishing. Put me down, it said. Put me down and jump, for goodness sake. She put it down. Suddenly the nurse caught Elfrida in her arms and kissed her many times. Farewell, my honey love, she said. All partings are not forever, else I could scarce let thee go. Now climb up, set thy foot here on the beam, now thy knee on the sill, so jump. Elfrida crouched on the window ledge where the snow lay thick and crisp. It was very, very cold. Have you ever had to jump out of a top-floor window into the dark where it was snowing heavily? If so, you will remember how much courage it needed. Elfrida set her teeth, looking down into black nothing, dotted with snowflakes. Then she looked back into the black passage lighted only by the rushlight the nurse carried. A rushlight is a light that's made with rushes wicking up oil or fat, I think. They were used in medieval times, but also after that. It was a very cheap form of, like a candle, but without having to have hard wax to use it for it. Edred'll be all right, she asked. Edred'll be all right, she asked. You're sure he'll jump all right? Of course I shall, said Edred in his new voice. Here, let me go first to show you I'm not a coward. Of course, Elfrida jumped instantly, and next moment Edred jumped too. It was a horrible moment, because however much you trusted the Mouldiwarp, you could not in an instant forget what you had been taught all your life, that if you jumped out of the top-floor windows, you would certainly be smashed to pieces on the stones below. To remember this, and remembering it to jump clear, is a very brave deed, and brave deeds sooner or later have their reward. The brave deed of Edred and Elfrida received its reward sooner, As Elfrida jumped, she saw the snowflakes gather and thicken into a cloud beneath her. The cloud was not the sort that lets you through either. Or it was solid and soft as piled eiderdown feathers. She knew this as it rose up and caught her, or as she fell on it. She never knew which. Next moment Edred was beside her, and the white, downy softness was shaping itself round and under them into the form of a seat, a back, arms, and a place for the feet to rest. What's that in your hand?" Elfrida asked. "Reins," said Edred with certainty. "White reins. It's a carriage." It was a carriage made of white snowflakes. The snowflakes that were warm and soft as feathers. There were white, soft carriage rugs that curled round and tucked themselves in entirely of their own accord. The reins were of snowflakes joined together by some magic weaving, and warm and soft as white velvet. And the horses! There aren't any horses. "These are swans, white swans," cried Elfrida, and the voice of the Mouldiwarp behind and above called softly, "All white things obey me." Edred knew how to drive. Sorry, I'm just looking here to see if I'm meant to be doing a picture. We've had that one. That was Elfrida and the Mouldiwarp and the nurse come witch. So I'm guessing that the next one is going to be that one, but I'm not sure what it is. So we'll carry on with reading, and when we get to the next picture in the book, I will show you. Edred knew how to drive, and now he could not resist the temptation to drive the 6 white swans round to the front of the house and to swoop down, passing just over the heads of the soldiers of the guard, who were still earnestly pounding at the door of Arden House, and yelled to them, "Ha ha! Sold again!" which seemed to startle them very much. Then he wheeled the swans round and drove quickly through the air along the way which he knew quite well, without being told, to be the right way. And as the snow carriage wheeled, both Edred and Elfrida had a strange, sudden vision of another, smaller snow carriage, drawn by only 2 swans, that circled above theirs and vanished in the deep dark of the sky, giving them an odd, tantalizing glimpse of a face they knew and yet could not remember distinctly enough to give a name to the owner of it. Then the swans spread their white, mighty wings to the air and strained with their long, strong necks against their collars, and the snow equipage streamed out of London like a slender white scarf driven along in the wind, and London was left behind, and the snowstorm, and soon the dark blue of the sky was over them, jewelled with the quiet silver of watchful stars, and the deeper dark of the Kentish county lay below, jewelled with the quiet gold from the windows of farms already half asleep. And the air that rushed past their faces as they went was no longer cold, but soft, as June air is. And Elfrida always declared afterwards that she could smell white lilies all the way. Probably because it's another white thing. There you go. I do like her descriptions in this book. White lilies, and Elfrida always declared afterwards that she could smell white lilies all the way. So across the darkened counties they went, and the ride was more wonderful than any ride they had ever had before or would ever have again. All too soon the swans hung poised on long level wings outside the window of a tower in Arden Castle, a tower they did not know. So it must be a part of the castle they haven't explored yet. But though they did not know the tower, it was quite plain that they were meant to get in at the window of it. "Dear swans," said Elfrida, who had been thinking as she sat clutching her brownie, that's the camera, "can't we stay in your carriage till it's light? We do so want to take a photograph of the castle." The swans shook their fat, white, flat, snake-like heads, just as though they understood, and there was the open window evidently waiting to welcome the children. So they got out, very much against their wills. And there they were in the dark room of the tower, and it was very cold. but before they had had time to begin to understand how cold it was and how uncomfortable they were likely to be for the rest of the night, 6 swans' heads appeared at the window and said something. "Oh," said Elfrida, "I do wish we'd learned Swanish instead of French at school." But it did not matter. The next moment the swans' heads ducked and reappeared, holding in their beaks the soft, fluffy white rugs that had kept the children so warm in the snow carriage. The swans pushed the rugs through the window with their strong white wings and made some more remarks in swan language. "Oh, thank you," said the children. "Goodbye, goodbye." Then there was the rush of wide-going wings, and the children, tired out, cuddled on the floor, wrapped in the soft rugs. The happiest kind of dreams were tucked up in that coverlet, and it seemed hardly any time at all before the children woke to find the winter sunshine looking in at them through the narrow windows of the tower. Elfrida jumped up and threw off the silver-white downy soft coverlet. It instantly tore itself into 5 pieces of different shapes and sizes, and these screwed themselves up and drew themselves in and blew themselves out and turned before her very eyes into a silver basin of warm water, a piece of lily-scented soap, a towel, a silver comb, and an ivory toothbrush. "Well," said Elfrida, when she had finished her simple toilet, the basin, soap, towel, toothbrush and comb ran together like globules of quicksilver, made a curious tousled lump of themselves, and straightened out into the fluffy coverlet again. "Well," said Elfrida again. Then she woke Edred, and his coverlet played the same clever and pretty trick for him. And then the children started to go down with the Brownie and take photographs of the castle. The shining coverlets jumped up into 2 white furry coats, such as the very affluent might wear when they went motoring, if the very affluent ever thought of anything so pretty. And one of the coats came politely to the side of each child, holding out its arms as if it were saying, "Do please oblige me by putting me on," which of course both the children did. They crept down the corkscrew stairs and through a heavy door that opened under the arch of the great gateway. Okay, that's where they are. The great gate was open, and on the step of the door opposite to the one by which they had come out, a soldier sat. He held his helmet between his knees and was scouring it with sand and whistling as he scoured. He touched his forehead with a sandy hand, but did not get up. So to keep the metal of the armour that they used, I'm guessing it was steel by this stage, but I don't know. I can't remember when steel came into use. Otherwise it was iron, but very thin sheets of it. Rusts very easily. And so to keep it shiny and therefore look very fancy, and especially for important things, just right, you would use sand as an abrasive compound, as a rubbing compound, and it would take off any dirt on the surface and any surface rust and things like that. And then you'd buff it up with a cloth and possibly even wipe a little bit of oil or fat across the surface just to stop it getting surface rust on it again. So he was using the sand like we would use sandpaper or polishing compound. You're early afield, he said, and went on rubbing the sand on the helmet. Sorry, I think my phone just buzzed. No, I don't need to. I've got someone trying to send me a message on one of the social media services. I don't think I know them, but we'll find out a bit later on, not now. Anyway, "You're early afield," he said, and went on rubbing the sand on the helmet. "It's such a pretty day," said Elfrida. "May we go out?" "And welcome," said the man simply, "but go not beyond the 12-acre for fear of rough folk and Egyptians, and go not far, but breakfast will have a strong voice to call you back." Yeah, that's true. If you're hungry, you're going to want to come back for food sometime sooner rather than later, aren't you? Right, they went out, and instead of stepping straight onto the turf of the downs, which is in their own time period what is right outside the gate, their stout shoes struck echoing notes from the wooden planks of a bridge. "It's a drawbridge," said Edred in tones of awe, "and there's a moat, look, and it's covered with cat ice at the edge." And there was, and it was, And at the moat's far edge, their feet fast in the cat ice, were reeds and sedge, brown and yellow and dried, that rustled and whispered as a wild duck flew out of them. "How lovely," said Elfrida. "I do wish Arden had a moat now." So what is cat ice? Maybe someone would like to look that one up. This is a tip I didn't give you at the beginning. Have a pencil or pen and paper handy to write down things that you want to find out about that get talked about in our story. Cat ice. I'm guessing it's ice that's only a cat could walk on because it's going to be otherwise breaking underneath whatever else it is that walks on it. It sounds like that's sort of an English phrase for something, doesn't it? "How lovely," said Elfrida. "I do wish Arden had a moat now." "If we found out where the water comes from," said Edred practically, "we might get the moat back when we found the treasure." Yeah, if they find the treasure, then they can rebuild things, and if they know where the water source is to supply the moat, that would do it. So when they had crossed the moat and felt the frozen dew crackle under their feet as they trod the grass, so that would be frost, they set out, before photographing the castle, to find out where the moat water came from. There you go. Q has said to us what cat ice means. Thin, often milky ice from under which the water has receded. Shell ice. Not something you want to stand on because it's going to collapse, and it will be so thin that it breaks very easily anyway. I like that description though. That's good. I like that. The moat they found was fed by a stream that came across the field from Arden Knoll. Knoll is the hilltop behind the castle, and entered the moat at the northeast corner, leaving it at the corner that was in the southwest. They followed the stream, and it was not till they had gone quite into the middle of the field and well away from the castle that they saw how very beautiful the castle really was. It was quite perfect. No crumbled arches, no broken pillars, no shattered, battered walls. "Oh," said Edred, "how beautiful it is! How glad I am that we've got a castle like this." "Our castle isn't like this," said Elfrida. "No, but it shall be when we've found the treasure. You've got the 2 film rolls all right?" "Yes," said Elfrida, who'd got them in a great unwieldy pocket that was hanging and banging against her legs under the full skirt she was wearing. "Oh, look, where's the river? It stops short." It certainly seemed to. Sorry, just a moment. It certainly seemed to. They were walking beside it, and it ran swiftly, looking like a steel grey ribbon on the green cloth of the field, and halfway across the field it did stop short. There wasn't any more of it, as though the ribbon had been snipped off by a giant pair of scissors, and the rest of it rolled up and put by safely somewhere out of the way. Have you ever seen a river or a stream like that, where it just suddenly starts in the middle of nowhere? That's what they've just seen. So it's a stream at this point, I would say, and I'm guessing it comes up from underground, especially on the limestone of the downs. Yeah, that's how we get our water supply in the area that I am, except it's not breaking out through the ground. We drill down into through the limestone into areas where there's water caught inside the limestone, and that provides water for our area. I don't use that water. I use water that comes from my roof, rainwater, because I don't live in a highly populated part of the city, so the air around us is clean enough that our water is nice, because it's rainwater instead of treated town water. Right, we'll carry on with the story. Where's the river? It stopped short. It certainly seemed to. They were walking beside it, and it ran swiftly, looking like a steel grey ribbon on the green cloth of the field, and halfway across the field it did stop short. There wasn't any more of it, as though the ribbon had been snipped off by a giant pair of scissors, and the rest of it rolled up and put by safely somewhere out of the way. "My hat," said Edred, "it does stop short, and no mistake." Curiosity pricked him, and he started running. They both ran. They ran to the spot where the giant scissors seemed to have snipped off the stream, and when they got there they found that the stream seemed to have got tired of running above ground, and without any warning at all, any sloping of its bed or any deepening of its banks plunged straight down into the earth through a hole not 8 feet across. 8 feet, that's still a reasonable size hole. It's not just like, They stood fascinated, watching the water as it shot over the edge of the hole like a steel band on a driving wheel, smooth and shining and moving so swiftly that it hardly seemed to move at all. It was Edred who roused himself to say, "I could watch it forever, but we'll have it back. We'll have it back. Come along, let's go and see where it comes from." So I think this is the downstream end of it. So that's where it's going to. "Let's photograph this place first," said Elfrida, "so as to know, you know." And the Brownie clicked twice. Then they retraced their steps beside the stream and round 2 sides of the moat and across the field to Arden Knoll. So they had gone downstream from the castle and it disappeared into the ground. And there, oh wonderful to see, the stream came straight out of the knoll at the part where it joined on to the rest of the world, came out under a rough, low arch of stone that lay close against the very lip of the water. I think this is the cue for our next picture. Look who's wearing great big coats and odd hats, probably from the time period. And then their big clumpy shoes. Here's the water coming out. There's some rough stuff there as well. Intriguing. So that's where it came from, and that's where it goes to, said Elfrida. I wonder what became of it and why it isn't at Arden now. Very interesting. I'm just going to turn that one off for now. I'm probably going to have to give you another picture after this one in this chapter. So if you just give me a moment, I shall find it for you. Just because they are in numerical order. It's just that I have to. Oh, I did that through the wrong one. Right. Then I'll be able to show it to you when it's the right time. Because often this book has a cluster of pictures fairly close together. So I am making sure they are available at the right stage of the story. Right, done. So the one that we have is the stream coming out of this little rough archway on the hillside. I would say that the knoll is back over here and it comes down as a slope towards this flatter land here, and then the stream runs down and around the castle through the moat. There you go. Right, next one will be that. In the right place for you. Last time I managed to get them all sorted out beforehand, didn't I? Ah, well. So that's where it came from and that's where it goes to, said Elfrida. I wonder what became of it and why it isn't at Arden now. We'll bring it back, said Edred firmly, when we find the treasure. And again the Brownie clicked. And we'll make the castle like it is now, said Elfrida. Come on, let's photograph it. So they went back and they photographed the castle. They photographed it from the north and the south and the east and the west and the northeast and the southeast and the northwest and all the rest of the points of the compass that I could easily tell you if I liked, but why be wearisome and instructive? And they went back across the hollow echoing drawbridge and past the soldier who had now polished his helmet to his complete satisfaction and was wearing it. There was a brief and ardent conference on the drawbridge, the subject of it, breakfast. Edred wanted to stay. He was curious to see what sort of breakfast people had in the country in James the First's time. Elfrida wanted to go back to 1908 and the certainty of eggs and bacon. I like the sound of eggs and bacon. If we stay here, we shall only be dragged into some new adventure, she urged. And I know we shall. I never in my life knew such a place as history for adventures to happen in. And I'm tired. Besides, oh, Edred, do come along. I believe it's ducks, said Edred, and he sniffed questioningly. It smells like onion stuffing. Stuff and nonsense, said Elfrida. That's for dinner most likely. I expect breakfast for us would be bread and water. You'd find we'd done something wrong as likely as not. Oh, come along, do, before we get punished for it. Besides, don't you want to know whether what Cousin Richard said about the cricket was right? Well, yes, said Edred, and we can always come back here, can't we? Of course we can, said Elfrida eagerly. Oh, come on. So they climbed up to the twisty, twiny corkscrew staircase and found the door of the room where they had slept under the wonderful white coverlets that were now coats. Then they stood still and looked at each other with a sudden shock. How are we to get back? Was the unspoken question that trembled on each lip. The magic white coats cuddled close around their necks. There was somehow comfort and confidence in the soft, friendly touch of that magic fur. When you are wearing that sort of coat, it is quite impossible to feel that everything will not come perfectly right the moment you really, earnestly and thoroughly wish that it should come right. Our clothes, said Elfrida. Oh, yes, of course, said Edred. I was forgetting. You may as well go on forgetting, said his sister, because the clothes aren't here. They're the other side of this twisty, twiny, inside-out, upside-down shakiness that turned the attic into the tower. I suppose the tower would turn back into the attic if we could only start that shaky upside-downness going wrong way before, you know. I suppose it would, said Edred, stopping short, with his fingers between the buttons of his doublet. Hello, what's this? He pulled out the folded paper. It's the thing about cricket that Cousin Richard gave you. Don't bother about that now. I want to get back. I suppose we ought to make some poetry. But Edred pulled out the paper and unfolded it. It might vanish, you know, he said, or get stuck here, and when we go home we should find it gone when we came to look for it. Let's just see what he says Kent did make. Kent being the sports team that supposedly made a certain number of runs in the cricket. He straightened out the paper, looked at it, looked again, and held it out with a sudden arm's-length gesture. Look at that, he said. If that's true, Richard has dreamed our times, and no mistake. And what's more, he's brought things back here out of our times. Elfrida took the paper and looked at it, and her mouth dropped open. If that's true, said she, but it must be true. The paper almost fell from her hand, for it was a bill from Gamages for 3 ship's guns, a compass, and a half-dozen flags, and the bill was made out to Mr. R.D. Arden, 117 Laurie Grove, New Cross, London, South East. On the other side was the pencilled record of the runs made by Kent the previous Thursday. I say, said Elfrida, and was going to say I don't know what clever and interesting things, when she felt the fur coat creep and wriggle all through its soft length and along its soft width, and no wriggle that ever was wriggled expressed so completely. Danger! 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 You'd better get off while you can, while you can! A quite violent ruffling of the fur around the neck of her coat, and as plain as if it could speak. Don't stop to draw. Go now! 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 When you say a lady is a true daughter of Eve, you mean that she is inquisitive. Elfrida was enough Eve's daughter to scurry to the window and look out. A thrill ran right down her backbone and ended in an empty feeling at the ends of her fingers and feet. Soldiers! She cried, and they're after us. I know they are. Looking out the window, down to the bottom of the courtyard below them, the fur coat knew it too, if knowledge can be expressed by wriggling. Oh, and they're pulling up the drawbridge. What for? Said Edred, who had come to the window too. And I say, doesn't the portcullis look guillotine-ish when it comes down like that? Oh my goodness. Are the soldiers in the courtyard or outside on the other side of the moat? They've pulled up the drawbridge. They have dropped the portcullis. Do you know what a portcullis is? Okay, I'll find you a picture, just because we haven't had any pictures for a while. Portcullis. I'll find you a decent picture, and you'll see why it's considered something scary when it comes down. Which one's a good one to show you? I'll show you one that looks from as if, no, that one's not very clear. That one's a clearer one. So a portcullis is like a mesh originally made out of timber that is bolted or nailed or fastened together. And then what happens after that is that it is put into the slots of the gatehouse so that it can go up and down like a door, which is why Edred was saying it's like a guillotine when they drop it like that. A guillotine, or a guillotine if you're French, was a blade that was used for cutting off the heads of kings and nobles, royalty, and all those sort of ones in France during the French Revolution. Just in case you were wondering, there you go. So that's what a guillotine is. So he's referring to it as being like that. Now I'm just going to find you this portcullis picture. There it is. Move it over so it will be in the right place for you to see. And choose it. There you go. So this thing here is the portcullis, and this is suspended up at this height. I've probably lowered it a little bit so you can see it, just to make it more impressive. This is obviously a modern surface outside here. There is no moat there. There is no drawbridge or anything like this. But if you drop this down, those points sit into the ground or just on the stone sill, and you cannot get through that because the timber that it's made out of is quite chunky. And also they can poke spears through and get you if you're on the other side of it, and even shoot arrows through it, but you cannot get through it easily. Now, these walls here are the walls of the castle. So the walls are not just from here to here, which is like a gateway. It also comes back further out this way. This is the wall up above here has a hollow into it so you can get through to the gateway. And often they would have a hole there where they could drop things down or look through it to see anyone who's stuck inside this bit. Sometimes you'd have an inside gate further back towards this way, so people would be stuck in that middle bit. So that's the portcullis, that pointy thing. And if you're English, you have a portcullis on as an emblem of the exchequer, which is the basically the treasury of the UK monetary system. There is a picture of a portcullis on the 1p piece. Yes, the hole up the top, you can pour hot tar and oil through it and all sorts of things like that, just to sort of attack your people who are trying to come in. Also, if you've got crenellations outside, you can pour stuff over the edge, and sometimes they would actually have a platform built out with a wall up the outside with holes in that platform, and they would do the same thing there. So soldiers who were trying to get in and they were up against the wall of the castle to either throw a grappling hook up and pull themselves up or whatever else like that, you could pour hot damaging things down on top of them, or drop rocks, all those things. Anyway, so the English 1p piece, let's see if I can find one. 1 pence. 1 penny. So find one that I'm allowed to show you, not one that is on a stock image site. Save image as. Here we go. And we'll pull this one up too, or instead of, here's a 1 penny piece. There you go. See, that's actually a portcullis. In the middle of that, that's a portcullis, and it's used as part of the symbol for what they call the exchequer, which is, in New Zealand, we would call that the treasury. So there's the portcullis, there's the chains for the mechanism for pulling it up and down, and then there's the crown as the symbol of who they represent. Is my understanding of what the symbolism is on the English coinage. There you go. So we'll just go back to this one. There's the children looking out. And we'll find out what it says next. So, oh, and they're pulling up the drawbridge. What for, said Edred, who'd come to the window too. So obviously where they are, the window that they're looking out, they can see the portcullis and the drawbridge and all that sort of stuff. And as the town, through the window, I'm going to try and find the right place on the sentence again. I say, doesn't the portcullis look guillotine-ish when it comes down like that? Through the window, one looks straight down onto the drawbridge, and as the tower stuck out beyond the gate, its side window gave an excellent view of the slowly descending portcullis. There you go. So, gate here, the wall goes along, and then there's a tower that pokes out. Sorry. There's the wall there, the gate goes through, and the tower that they're in, this is looking down on it, okay? Trust me, this is a plan I'm drawing for you. So the wall comes along, and then there's a tower comes out like this, and then they're looking at the window back down towards the gate. Put that back up the right way and you can see it in your mind. Pretend it's bricks or blocks and you're looking down on it. Toy bricks. Right. I say, said Elfrida, my fluffy coat says go. Doesn't yours? It would if I'd listened to it, said Edred carelessly. The soldiers were quite near now, so near that Elfrida could see how fierce they looked, and she knew that they were the same soldiers who had hammered so loud and so hard at the door of Arden House in Soho. They must have ridden all night. So she screwed up her mind to make poetry, just as you screw up your muscles to jump a gate or to run 100 yards. You tense it all up, get it all ready to work hard. That's what she's doing with her mind, to write poetry. And almost before she knew that she was screwing it up at all, the screw had acted, and she had screwed out a piece of Mouldiwarp poetry and was saying it aloud. Dear Mouldiwarp, since Cousin Dick buys his beautiful flags from Gammages, take us away and take us quick before the soldiers do us any damages. Excellent. And the moment she had said it, the white magic coats grew up and grew down and wrapped the children up as tight and as soft as ever a silkworm wrapped itself when it was tired of being a silkworm and entered into its cocoon, as the first step towards being a person with wings. Can you imagine what it would be like to have lovely liquid sleep emptied on you by the warm tubful? That is what it felt like inside the white, wonderful cocoons. The children knew that the tower was turning wrong way up and inside out, but it didn't matter a bit. Sleep was raining down on them in magic showers. No, it was closing on them, closer and closer, nearer and nearer, soft, delicious layers of warm delight. A soft humming sound was in their ears, like the sound of bees when you push through a bed of Canterbury bells, and the next thing that happened was that they came out of the past and into the present with a sort of snap of light and a twist of sound. It was like coming out of a railway tunnel into the daylight. The magic coverlet coat cocoons had even saved them the trouble of changing into their own clothes, for they found that the stiff, heavy clothes had gone, and they were dressed in the little ordinary things that they had always been used to. And now, said Elfrida, let's have another look at that gammage paper, if it hasn't disappeared. I expect it has, though. So Gammages is a place where you could buy things. Let's find out a little bit more. Gammages. Gammages of London. There you go. It was a department store in Holborn, London. There you go. Trading between 1878 and 1972. Not the time period they had gone back to visit. So that's why they believe that young Richard, their cousin, had time travelled too. It was particularly well known for its toy and hardware departments. Began life in a rented watch repair shop and became a success amongst its customers and established as a London institution. Just trying to see if I can get you a clear enough picture that you can actually appreciate it and put it where I can actually show it to you. It's funny how some chapters we have lots of things I can show you, and other chapters we have lots of things I can't show you. Oh, that's I didn't think it was going to actually turn out big. So let's see if we can get it so it looked like it was a really small picture when I tried saving it. Damages. There you go. And this picture is from the late 19th century. Look, it's even got lights across the front saying its name. There's the front entrance. Here's glass windows for displaying things in. And it's also got, hang on, let's just see if I can make that a slightly different size so I can see it better. There's a street lamp outside it. It's probably got some of their wares actually hanging just under the roof along here as well, just to sort of tempt you to come in and buy. Gamages, there you go. It was a real shop. So, and now let's have another look at that gamage paper if it hasn't disappeared. I expect it has though, but it hadn't. I should like to meet Dick again, said Edred as they went downstairs. He was much the jolliest boy I ever met. Perhaps we shall, Elfrida said hopefully. You see, he does come into our times. I expect that New Cross time he stayed... Hang on. I expect that New Cross time he stayed quite a long while, like we did when we went to Gunpowder Plot times. Or we might go back there a little later when the Gunpowder Plot has all died away and been forgotten. It isn't forgotten yet, said Edred, and it's 300 years ago. Now, let's develop our films. I'm not at all sure about those films. You see, we took the films with us, and of course we've brought them back, but the picture that's on the films, we didn't take that with us. I shouldn't be a bit surprised if the films are all blank. He's really starting to think outside the box now, isn't he? It's very, very clever of you to think of it, said Elfrida respectfully, but I do hope it's a perfectly silly idea of yours. Yeah, they really do want to see the pictures of the castle. Let's ask Mrs. Honeysett if we may use the old room she said used to be the still room to develop them in. It'll be a ripping dark room when the shutters are up. Do you know what a still room is? That's the room in the grand house that was used set aside for making wines, spirits, beers, all that sort of stuff, for distilling things, and also distilling oils from plants, because the oils from different plants are used for different purposes, and ointments and things like that. Of course you may, said Mrs. Honeysett. Yes, and I'll carry you in a couple of pails of water. The floor's stone, so it won't matter if you do slop a bit. You pump, my lord, and I'll hold the pails. Why was that part of the house let to go all dirty and cobwebby? Asked Elfrida when the hoarse voice of the pump had ceased to be heard. It's always been so, said Mrs. Honeysett. I couldn't take it upon me to clear up without Miss Edith's orders, not but what my fingers itch to be at it with a broom and a scrubbing brush. But why? Elfrida persisted. Oh, it's one of them old ancient tales, said Mrs. Honeysett. Old Beale could tell you if anyone could. We'll go down to Old Beale's, said Edred decidedly, as soon as we've developed our pictures of the castle, if there are any pictures. Now, they're going to develop them themselves because they are black and white film, and you could develop black and white film relatively easily at home if you had the right chemicals. One of the wonders of black and white film is that if you had the right conditions and the right chemicals, you could actually take the film and end up with photographs yourself. Right. You never can tell with them photo machines, can you? Said Mrs. Honeysett sympathetically. My husband's cousin's wife took with all her family by her own back door, and when they come to wash out the picture, it turned out they'd took the next door people's water butt by mistake. owing to their billy goat jogging the young man's elbow that got the camera. And it wasn't a bit like any of them. So let's hope that they didn't have that happen. And I'm going to stop there because the next chapter is 48 pages long, which is a bit long for today. Sorry about that. But it gives you something to look forward to. So are they going to have pictures? I will give you a hint. The next chapter is called Developments. I wonder if that's to do with developing photographs or if it's about things developing, things happening in the story to do with their history. Oh, intriguing. And what is the story with Cousin Richard? How is it that he's time traveling? And what was that other carriage or coach or whatever it was pulled by the swans, 2 swans instead of the other one? Oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? We'll have to find out next time in the next story. So don't forget, you can join me over on my Discord server and chat about any ideas you think about what might be going to happen, or places you've been to that remind you of places in the story, or even pictures you've seen online that remind you of places in the story, or anything like that. I love all that sort of stuff, and I know other people do, so you might as well. And also, you can make suggestions about what you think might be another good book to read sometime. I'm not going to read the sequel to this one straight afterwards. We'll read something else. And I'm not promising that I will read your suggestions straight away. It will depend on the book and whether it's something that's in public domain. But you can actually join in and you can actually contribute. And if you've come across any words when I'm reading that you weren't sure about, even if you think that I knew, but just to make it clear for other people, because don't assume that you're the only person who doesn't understand some of those words. If you come across a word that you're intrigued by, look it up, copy the definition of it, and then put it in there. I'm sure there's a section in the chat. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, so in the chat over on Discord, there's one channel called General Chatter. If you go underneath that, there's intros, then there's General Chatter. So if you're new there, say hi to everybody in the intros one. Tell everyone who you are and what you do and weird things about yourself or whatever. I don't care. Just keep it seemingly appropriate for families. Then there's General Chatter, and just under that, there's a section called Story Ideas and New Words. Make suggestions of vintage children's stories you'd like read here. I'd prefer that they're really old and therefore in the public domain. You can also post the old words that you discovered in today's read. Share what you thought they meant, not just what they actually mean, because that's really intriguing. Sometimes you will look up a book, look up a word, and you'll go, I think it means this. And you look it up and it means something completely different. And yet there's often a connection that makes you think why it meant that. Either the sounds of it remind you of something else, another word, you may have thought it was connected to something else. Sometimes it actually will be connected to what the meaning really was, and you just happen to have a little bit of knowledge that you didn't even realize. And it's a great way to just sort of develop all these things in your head and expand the connections, all that sort of thing. Anyway, so I look forward to seeing you next time. Don't forget to join the Discord. Don't forget to go and check out some of the Codex readers. It's wonderful having you all here. Q, I'm so glad you're feeling a bit better than you had been, and lovely to have you and Jonathan both here listening today. I really appreciate that. We'll look forward to seeing you all next time. If you can make it, it would be good if you could. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.